Okay, let's unpack this because honestly, this one threw me for a bit of a loop.
Yeah, I think we were both a little surprised by what we were looking at today.
Right. Usually, when we sit down to do a deep dive for you, we are looking at stacks of articles.
Right, biographies, big, long interviews.
Exactly, maybe a documentary or two. We have to sift through hours of content to find the gold. But today,
Today's different.
very different. Today we are looking at something, well, something much smaller.
Significantly smaller,
Yeah,
but honestly, perhaps more intriguing because of that.
I totally agree. We have a single source today. It is a Wikipedia entry. And not just any entry, it is what they call a stub.
Just a stub, barely a page long.
Barely a page.
Yeah.
For a man named Lloyd Dugger. Doug Dugger. And here's the thing that got me hooked immediately. This man, whose entire digital existence seems to be compressed into just a few paragraphs.
Yeah.
He was officially inducted into the Country Legends Association Hall of Fame as a living legend.
It is a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
It really is.
We live in this age of total information overload, right? Yet here is a figure labeled a living legend, a man who clearly had a massive impact on his genre, and yet his history is preserved in this tiny, fragile digital container.
It feels like we found a treasure map where, I don't know, half the ink has faded away.
That is a great way to put it, and I think that sets the mission for this deep dive. We aren't just summarizing an article today.
No, not at all.
We are engaging in a bit of archival reconstruction. We have to take these dry fact dates, locations, a couple of song titles, and connect the dots to understand the trajectory of a really significant cultural figure.
Right. We are basically going to be detectives today. Our goal is to trace the journey of the man they called the Chaplain of country music.
Such a great title.
We're going from a kid with a banjo in Missouri to a national touring artist, a TV star, and eventually a broadcast executive. And we're going to do it all from this one stub. So where does the legend of Doug Dugger actually begin?
Well, as with so many great American stories, it starts right in the heartland. Lloyd Dugger was born in 1926 in Missouri.
And the source gives us this really evocative image right off the bat. It says, as a boy in Missouri, Dugger played banjo and sang.
Yeah?
I just love that. It's such classic Americana imagery. You can almost hear the plucking of the strings just reading that sentence.
It establishes his roots immediately. He wasn't some manufactured pop star.
Yeah.
He was part of a folk tradition. And think about the banjo specifically. It's a rhythmic instrument.
Very rhythmic.
It's percussive. To learn the banjo as a boy in the 1930s implies you aren't just learning notes. You're learning how to drive a song forward. You're learning the actual engine of the music.
That's a really great point. He's learning the mechanics of the sound before he can even drive a car.
Exactly.
But what's interesting is that while the music was there early on, his career didn't start in Missouri. It had to wait for history to intervene.
Right, because we're talking about a man born in 1926.
Yeah.
So by the time he's hitting late adolescence, the world is at war.
Precisely. The source notes his service in the U.S. Navy. Now, we don't have the details of his deployment in this stub, but we do know the timeline. He was discharged in 1946.
1946.
Right, which is a pivotal year in American history. The post-war boom is just beginning, soldiers are coming home, and everyone is trying to figure out what their life is going to look like now that the fighting has stopped.
It's a moment of immense energy in the country. You have millions of young men returning with money in their pockets, a lot of life experience, and a real desire to be entertained.
Oh, absolutely.
The dance halls, the honky-tonks, the American Legion posts, they were overflowing.
And this is where it gets really interesting. This is the moment I want to spend some time on. Because if this were a movie, this would be the opening scene.
The Missoula moment.
The Missoula moment. Okay, so for everyone listening, picture this. It's 1946. Doug Dugger is fresh out of the Navy. He leaves the Midwest and heads out to Missoula, Montana.
Right.
He's 20 years old. And one night, he goes to the American Legion post.
Which, at that time, would have been the absolute center of social life for returning veterans.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a bar. It was a community hub.
Exactly. And playing that night is T. Texas Tyler.
Huge name.
Right. For those who don't know, T. Texas Tyler wasn't just some local guy playing a corner stage. He was a legitimate star in the country and Western scene.
He was massive.
Yeah.
Tyler was known for that growling, honky-tonk sound. He had charisma for days.
So, understand the dynamic here. You have a national star on stage, and you have Dugger, a 20-year-old kid, just a face in the crowd.
Just a fan holding a drink.
Exactly.
But not for long, because the source says he was invited to play with the band informally.
Unbelievable.
Just invited up. Can you imagine the nerve that takes? You're 20 years old, you just got out of the Navy, and suddenly you're on stage with a star.
The word informally is doing a lot of heavy lifting there in the text.
It really is. We see this in music history sometimes. Maybe there was an open mic portion, or maybe a band member knew him from somewhere. But regardless of how he got up there, let's look at the musical implications of that moment.
Yeah.
You don't just walk onto a stage with a professional touring band and jam unless you have serious chops.
Right, you cannot fake it.
You really can't. That informal session is a high-pressure audition, whether he knew it or not. You have to find the key, find the groove, lock in with the drummer if they had one, or the rhythm guitar. If he had been bad, he would have been laughed off the stage.
Or worse.
Yeah, maybe even booed by a room full of veterans. That would be the end of the story right there.
But he wasn't bad.
No, he clearly wasn't. The outcome, as the source bluntly puts it, is that the group then hired him as a bass player.
I love that detail so much. He walks in as an audience member and walks out as an employee. He literally got hired on the spot.
It speaks to a level of serendipity, sure, but also immense preparation. He had to be ready for that moment. And notice the instrument switch, or at least the versatility we're seeing here. The source told us earlier he played banjo as a boy. Now he's hired as a bass player.
That's a huge shift. I mean, banjo is all about that high-end twang, lots of notes, very fast. Bass is the floor. It's the heartbeat of the whole song.
Exactly. That implies he was a multi-instrumentalist, which makes him incredibly valuable to a touring band. In 1946, if you can sing harmony, play banjo, and hold down the low end on the bass, you are a Swiss Army knife.
Totally.
You are exactly the kind of guy T-Texas Tyler needs in the van.
So this random night at an American Legion post in Montana basically launches his entire life. He goes from Lloyd Dugger, Navy vet, to Doug Dugger, bass player for T-Texas Tyler.
And that wasn't a short gig either. This is where we have to appreciate the absolute grind of his career. The source tells us he toured with Tyler until 1956.
That's a full decade.
10 years on the road. Think about what that means in the late 40s and early 50s. The interstate highway system didn't even exist for most of that time.
Oh, wow, that's true. Eisenhower hadn't signed the act yet.
Right.
So we're talking two-lane blacktops for everything.
Two-lane highways, crowded cars, sleeping in motels, or worse, sleeping in the car itself. This is grueling blue-collar touring. It's setting up your own gear, dealing with broken strings, bad weather, and rowdy crowds night after night.
That is earning your stripes in the most literal sense. You know, we see these Hall of Fame accolades later in life, but they are built on that decade of grinding it out behind a bass guitar in small towns all across America.
Exactly. You learn showmanship by doing it 1,000 times. You learn how to read a room. And that decade of experience is what set him up for the next big leap. Because in 1956, everything changes for him again.
This is the breakthrough. After 10 years of touring, he signs with Top Talent, Inc. And suddenly, he's not just on the road anymore, he's on the airwaves.
This transition is crucial for understanding the era. We're moving from the dominance of radio and live touring into the golden age of television. The source mentions he appeared and toured with ABC TV's Ozark Jubilee.
The Ozark Jubilee was huge. That was true national exposure.
It was the first network television program to feature country music stars. Before this, you might hear a guy on the Grand Ole Opry radio broadcast, but you wouldn't necessarily know what he looked like. Being part of the Jubilee cast meant you weren't just a regional success anymore. You were a national figure.
You were coming right into living rooms from coast to coast every single week.
Exactly.
And this is around the time we start seeing his own hits mentioned in the stub. The source lists two specific songs, Bummin' Around and The Deck of Cards.
Both are very significant titles when you look at his career. Bummin' Around suggests that classic wandering troubadour spirit. It fits the image of the guy who has been on the road for 10 hard years.
Yeah.
But The Deck of Cards is the one that really catches my eye when we try to understand his persona.
The Deck of Cards, that's the spoken word piece, isn't it? The story about the soldier.
Yes, it is. It's a narrative song, almost a recitation. The premise is a soldier who's caught playing cards in church.
Right.
And when the provost marshal confronts him, the soldier explains that the deck of cards serves as his Bible, his almanac, and his prayer book. The ace is the one God, the deuce is the Old and New Testaments, and so on.
Oh, wow. Okay, suddenly the pieces are really clicking together. You have a guy who is a Navy veteran himself recording a hit song about a soldier's faith.
And the source explicitly mentions he had a religious style. This connects directly to the nickname the source provides, the Chaplain of country music.
That is such a specific brand to have. He wasn't the king or the boss, he was the chaplain.
It implies a real sense of moral authority, doesn't it? A
Mhm.
comforter, someone who offers guidance. In the rough and tumble world of country music touring, which, let's be honest, was known for drinking, cheating songs, and heartache, being the chaplain suggests he was a stabilizing force.
It really does. It paints a picture of a man who perhaps took the responsibility of his platform very seriously. He wasn't just there to entertain the crowd, he was there to maybe minister, in a way, even if it was just through the music.
I think that's a very fair assessment. It differentiated him from everyone else. While everyone else was singing about the honky-tonk on Saturday night, Dugger was the bridge to Sunday morning.
I love that.
And that sense of responsibility seems to have followed him as he transitioned into the next phase of his career, because he didn't stay a performer forever.
Right. The source talks about him becoming an executive later on. This is like the third act of his life. He becomes the co-host and executive producer of a syndicated weekly radio program.
And look at the title of that program, Legends and Legends in the Making.
Legends and Legends in the Making. That is definitely not a subtle title.
No, it tells us exactly what his philosophy was. The source notes the show featured country stars and new talent.
So, on one hand, you have the Legends people like himself, presumably, or his peers from the old T. Texas Tyler days, and then Legends in the Making, the new kids coming up.
Exactly. He's actively bridging the gap. Think about how important that is. He's using the clout he earned during those 10 years on the road and his time on national TV to shine a spotlight on the next generation. It's a very pure form of mentorship.
It's like he's paying it forward. Remember that night in Missoula in 1946? Someone, Tyler, gave him a shot, invited him on stage. Now, decades later, Dugger is the one holding the door open for the next kid with a guitar.
That is a beautiful connection. I hadn't thought of it quite that way, but you're entirely right. The structure of that radio show mirrors the serendipity of his own start. He created a platform where informal jams could happen on a national scale. He wasn't pulling up the ladder behind him, he was lowering it down.
And he did this as an executive producer. That's a serious role. It's not just showing up and singing your song. It's running the business. It shows he had a mind for the industry, not just the art. He understood that for the genre to survive, you really need to nurture the new blood.
Which brings us to the culmination of all this work, the recognition.
The Hall of Fame. The source says in 2003, the Country Legends Association Hall of Fame inducted him. And they didn't just induct him, they gave him a specific title.
Living legend.
That has to feel so good, to be recognized while you are still here to appreciate it.
It completely validates the entire journey, from the Missouri boy with the banjo to the Navy to the bass player, the TV star, the chaplain, the executive. It's an acknowledgement that he was a pillar of the genre. He wasn't just a participant, he was a foundation.
And then we come to the end of the story. The source tells us Dugger passed away on May 26, 2005.
He was 79 years old. The cause was congestive heart failure.
And look at the location. He died at his home in Missoula.
Full circle.
It really is. He went all over the country. The Ozark Jubilee, the national tours, the recording studios. But he came right back to Missoula, the place where he walked into that American Legion post and his whole life changed.
There's something very poetic about that. Missoula wasn't just a stop on the tour for him. It was home. It was where the movie moment happened, and it's where the credits finally rolled. It suggests that despite the national fame, he stayed connected to the place where he got his real start.
The source also mentions one last detail in the references section, an obituary in the Baltimore Sun.
Which might seem like a small detail at first glance, but think about the geography of that. He's from Missouri, lived his life in Montana. The Baltimore Sun is a major paper on the East Coast.
Yeah.
The fact that a major East Coast paper is running an obituary for a country musician from Montana proves his incredible reach.
That's a really great touch. If you're a local hero, you get an obit in the local gazette. If you're a living legend, you get an obit in the Sun.
Precisely. It confirms that the chaplain really did have a congregation that stretched across the entire country.
So what does this all mean for us today? We've taken this stub and we've pulled out this incredible life story. Navy vet, random jam session that leads to a job, TV star, the chaplain, radio executive, Hall of Famer.
It is an incredible arc, but I keep coming back to your opening point. The stub nature of the source material itself.
Yeah, it's kind of haunting, isn't it?
It really is. Here is a man who was officially designated a living legend. a man who literally produced a show about preserving legends for the future. And yet, if you look for him today, this short text is the primary artifact that remains easily accessible.
It makes you wonder how fragile these legacies actually are. You can be the chaplain of country music, you can have hit songs, you can be on national TV, and 60 years later, you're just a few paragraphs on a screen.
It serves as a strong reminder of how easily history can fade if it isn't actively explored and talked about. We assume that because we live in the digital age, everything is preserved forever. But preserved and remembered are two very different things. Doug Dugger's facts are preserved. We have the dates, the song titles, but his story, his actual story, requires effort to reconstruct.
It feels like there is this gap generation. They were too late for the old history books, but too early for the internet archives. If he had been born 30 years later, there would be YouTube clips of that night in Missoula. There would be Instagram posts from the TV studio.
Exactly. He existed in the analog world, and unless someone takes the time to digitize those memories, they just stay in the analog world. They stay in the minds of the people who are at the dance hall, and those people are, unfortunately, leaving us.
And that's exactly why we do these deep dives, right? To blow the dust off, to make sure the chaplain gets his due, to verify that the living legend title wasn't just words on a plaque.
Precisely. And I think it raises an important question for everyone listening to this right now.
What's the...
If a certified living legend like Doug Dugger has such a small digital footprint, what other incredible stories are hiding in the stubs of history? How many other movie script lives are sitting there just one click away, waiting for someone to actually read them and connect the dots?
That is a thought that is going to keep me up tonight. There are probably thousands of them. Musicians, scientists, inventors, local heroes, all just hiding in plain sight.
At least thousands. The internet is full of locked doors. Sometimes you just have to turn the handle.
Well, I hope we did Doug justice today. From the banjo boy in Missouri to the stage in Missoula, all the way to the Hall of Fame. What an absolute ride.
A legendary ride indeed.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Next time you see a short article, don't just scroll past it. Dig a little deeper. You might just find a legend. We'll see you next time.